So, all right, so now we're going to go to our next speaker. And so I've laid the table, and our next speaker is going to tell you what sort of stuff the pro-life majority in Congress is going to do to set the table. So our next guest is Miss McCrum. Megan is coming to us via Skype all the way, via the marvels of technology. Coming to us all the way from Washington, D.C. Megan is a staffer. There she is. Say hi, Megan. Megan is a staffer for Congressman Chris Smith. Congressman Smith is the chair of the bipartisan Pro-Life Caucus in Congress, and Megan is the staffer who chiefly handles his pro-life work. Megan has also worked for other pro-life entities. She's worked for National Right to Life and for other great pro-life organizations. So I would ask you to welcome Miss Megan McCrum.
Hey everyone. It's a little surreal because I can't see you, but I know you're there. So as John said, I work for a congressman. Can you all hear me? Just want to confirm. Okay, good. All right, so I work for Congressman Chris Smith, who's the chair of the Pro-Life Caucus in Congress and on the House side. And so I'm going to give you just a little picture of what is happening so far in the start of the 115th Congress and what we can expect to see in the first 100 days of the new Trump administration with pro-life majorities in the House and in the Senate. So there's three big ticket items that I'll cover briefly, and I know since you all are activists and committed to the movement, and these are probably brand new to you, but for the sake of clarity, I am going to kind of step back and walk through each of these policies a little bit more to lay the groundwork. So last week, a week and a half ago, the week before the March for Life, the House voted on the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion and Abortion Insurance Full Disclosure Act, which in shorthand form we call the Permanent Government-Wide Hyde Amendment. This is something that President Trump committed to on his campaign pledge to pro-life leaders, was that he would sign a permanent government-wide Hyde Amendment. First, let's say, what's the Hyde Amendment? Maybe John covered this. Maybe this is something you guys all got down, but we talk a lot about abortion funding and funding the abortion industry, and those are two distinct areas that we can address in policy. So the Hyde Amendment, so when Roe v. Wade legalized abortion and created abortion as a legal right, automatically, once it was a legal medical service, any government program that funded healthcare was interpreted to include funding for abortion. So the Medicaid program started paying for 300,000 abortions annually immediately after Roe v. Wade, with no change in the actual Medicaid statute. It just, by covering health care, that now was determined to cover abortion. So Henry Hyde in 1976 first authored the Hyde Amendment, which was basically like a little Band-Aid that put a plug on the Medicaid program and said none of the funds can go to pay for abortion, so to reimburse for Medicaid for abortion services. Now, of course, you all are very well familiar that obviously states can continue to pay for abortion, and so California does do that out of its own state Medicaid dollars, but the federal Medicaid program has been, since 1976, prohibited from paying for abortion, and this is an annual sort of, again, think of it as a little Band-Aid that's been plugged onto our Medicaid program. Has to be renewed annually, and there have been many times where it's been in serious danger of being lost, and was only defended kind of miraculously that it was saved. So Hyde just applies to one government funding stream and we think of the most notable program under that stream is Medicaid. And Hyde, you can think of, has all these little sister or cousins that have been cropped up over the years, so that we've created this patchwork of policies that's almost like a beaver dam, stopping the flow of government dollars to pay directly for the provision of abortion or health care plans that fund abortion. So we have Hyde similars attached to all sorts of funding streams: the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, DOD, the VA, the funding for the District of Columbia, which is under Congress's jurisdiction. So we have this patchwork that basically holds the flow back. but again, it has to be renewed annually. And every once in a while, you spring a leak because the government starts a new program that's not covered by this protective policy. And again, if it's a health program, it's automatically interpreted to fund abortion unless we exclude it. So the bill that Congress passed a week and a half ago, the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, takes that patchwork of policies and basically makes like a cement wall instead of a beaver dam to stop permanently and government-wide the flow of dollars to abortions, so that we won't have to have an annual fight this year, every year. And the other thing it very importantly does is it applies the Hyde Amendment to Obamacare, because if we think of sometimes we might spring a leak on funding for abortion, well, Obamacare was essentially its own river. It did not go through the annual appropriations process, so none of those protective policies we have are applied to Obamacare dollars. And so with Obamacare, there's many different problems with it when it comes to abortion, but the most notable one is, the premium subsidy program, where the government provides subsidies for individuals to help purchase health insurance. And because there is no protective limitation on those funds going to abortion, those subsidies can be used to purchase health insurance plans that cover abortion. If the Hyde Amendment or a Hyde principle had truly been applied to Obamacare, the marketplace plans that are eligible for subsidies would not include abortion. But we had a government audit of these plans done in 2014 that found that 1,000 of the plans sold on the Obamacare marketplace cover abortion on demand. And the millions of people receiving subsidies can use those subsidies to purchase those plans. So the bill that the Congress passed, No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion, would also stop this and prevent Obamacare subsidies from being used to purchase abortion. So this bill has been passed by the House, I believe, actually 4 times. But of course, we're in a new environment now. And, this relates to our broader principle that abortion is not health care. And so we need to exclude it from our health care programs. And in states, in places where the state policy is aligned with the federal government's position of not funding abortion through Medicaid, we have had great evidence from the research to show that 2 million people at least are alive today because of the Hyde Amendment policy. So that's a perfect reason for why we need to expand the policy, make it government-wide, make it permanent, so that more lives can be saved. So that was a great vote in the House. Senator Wicker from Mississippi has the bill in the Senate, and there is a commitment from the president. I think we do have a difficult situation even with a pro-life majority in the Senate. There's not 60 votes, which is what can enable us to actually pass legislation in the Senate. So there's not a super clear path forward, but it is a big priority for pro-life members and pro-life organizations. And so that is the Hyde Amendment type and the Hyde Amendment principle of it affects what the dollar can actually be used for. It blocks the dollar from being used to purchase abortion or health plans that cover abortion. The same week that Congress passed the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, President Trump reinstituted what you all Mexico City policy. To clarify, so Mexico City policy applies to international foreign aid, and sometimes in the press it says to stop funding for abortions overseas. Well, one of those Hyde similar or Hyde cousins is the Helms Amendment that blocks our foreign aid dollars from being used to pay for abortion overseas. So that's currently in place. Again, annual, depends on annual renewal. But what Mexico City does, which is, was not in effect under President Obama, has been reinstituted under President Trump, doesn't just apply to what the recipient of the U.S. taxpayer dollar can use the money for. It applies to who those recipients can be. So right now, what the Mexico City policy says is that if you are a foreign aid organization, you want to receive U.S. federal grant money to do international aid work abroad, you have to agree that that you will not perform or promote abortion, even with your private dollars, not just what you do with the government dollars. So it's up to the organizations. They can make a choice. And if they currently do abortion, they can choose to change their practices if they want to receive the U.S. taxpayer assistance. So their choice is really up to them. And so there's a lot of complaining in the abortion providing community right now about the Mexico City policy. But it's really, if they're so committed to abortion, then they can, do that without the assistance of the U.S. taxpayer. So that's what the Mexico City policy is. And you may have read in the news that the policy has been updated and modernized under the Trump administration. And this is a really great advancement and something that many members are really excited about. Mexico City policy, which is kind of a funny name. It was named because that's where President Reagan announced it on city in 1984. But that policy under Reagan and George W. Bush and Bush 1, this applied to the International Family Planning Account, which is a very big account right now. It's like $600 million a year that we spend for those programs. But under the Obama administration, it became apparent that groups that are major international abortion providers, like Marie Stopes International, which does 3 million abortion-related services a year, they were applying for U.S. grants under other programs, including programs to stop HIV, AIDS, programs for maternal child health, and receiving grants to do work in those areas. But they are big abortion advocates and promoters and providers. So the Trump policy expands Mexico City to all global health programs, that anyone who's applying to do global health work has to agree that they will not do abortion, because abortion is not health care. So really, this is a update because this is, the intention of the policy, but, it's just a reality of where organizations are doing work these days. So that's a great victory. And so it happened by executive order. And while we have pro-life majorities in both houses, we can also expect to see a vigorous attempt to strip that policy through legislative actions that'll have to be defeated. So those two things have already been, the Mexico City has been announced, needs to be implemented. No taxpayer funding for abortion has been passed by the House. But the third item that we anticipate to see in the first quarter of Congress's activity this year is in relation to Planned Parenthood. The nation's largest abortion provider does a third of the abortion in the country. Big abortion, and also very scandal plagued, as we all know. So clearly, there's many reasons to question why the U.S. taxpayer should be giving money to Planned Parenthood. But this, again, Planned Parenthood sort of fits the of what Mexico City is. It's currently under U.S. law. Planned Parenthood receives money to reimburse for its services, except for abortion. It can't, any government money it receives, it can't be used for abortion. But what we want to do is say it's not just what you can use the money for. It's also, investing in an abortion advocacy organization, and a group that does abortion is not who, the government wants to give its money to. So this affects not what they can do with the money, but who is eligible to receive money, and to say that large abortion organizations are not eligible to receive U.S. taxpayer dollars so long as they continue to do abortion. Again, the choice is up to them. So this has been an interest for members for several years, and last year, for the first time, the House and the Senate passed a bill that would stop Planned Parenthood from receiving Medicaid reimbursement for its non-abortion services, because obviously they don't receive reimbursement for abortion right now. And that bill was sent to President Obama, and he vetoed it. And I want to also note, you probably, if you see things about Planned Parenthood, they receive $500 million from government sources a year. So $400 million of their $500 million from Medicaid reimbursements. That's a huge chunk of where they're getting federal taxpayer dollars right now. So Congress's effort that would be a really significant step. So again, I said we did this in 2015. It was vetoed by Obama, and the ground had been laid, and the expectation is there that this is what we will now do in the first couple of months of our Congress here, is to send a bill that it's going to be packaged with, it's expected to be packaged with the bill that is to repeal Obamacare. We'll also reallocate Medicaid dollars away from Planned Parenthood. Again, there's no line item in the budget that says Planned Parenthood gets this much dollars. It's just that they are eligible right now to reimburse for services for their other work that they do, and apply for grants. So this would say that if you're a large abortion organization, no longer eligible, and so of course that money will then flow to any other provider that doesn't engage in abortion. And additionally, the bill actually pluses up the investment in the community health center program, which are federal organizations that don't engage in abortion. So that bill is in the process right now. Basically, they're using the budget reconciliation process. Is very special because it's a privileged procedure that only requires 50 votes in the Senate to advance. 51 votes in the Senate to advance, and the Republicans, again, not all Republicans are pro-life, as I'm sure you know, have a 52 vote, majority. So this is going to be a, skin of our teeth kind of vote, but it's a setup to use this budget reconciliation process to send a bill that will repeal Obamacare, include this provision reallocating money away from Planned Parenthood. And the first step of that was to pass a budget resolution to say this is what we intend to do, more not specific to the policy, but about the government is instructed to, or the budget committee is instructed to figure out a bill to save this much money. Right now, the committees of jurisdiction, which are Energy and Commerce, Ways and Means, etc., doesn't really, they are working on crafting this bill that will include all these pieces. So we're expecting that, in maybe in a month, maybe in the next few weeks. It could end up taking a little longer, but it's a top priority for folks to do, and will be obviously incredibly historic and significant if this is sent to President Trump, who among his 4 commitments that he made to pro-life leaders, one of them was defunding Planned Parenthood. So defunding Planned Parenthood, enacting a permanent government-wide Hyde Amendment, pro-life justice, and enacting the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which stops abortion at 20 weeks based on the evidence that the child can feel pain. Those are the 4 things that he's committed to, so I think you can look to see pro-life activity in those areas, and you're already seeing it. So that's the update from Congress.
Hold on. Thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate it. Let's give her a hand. Everyone's applauding you, so in case you can't see it. Does anyone have any quick questions for Megan before we hang up the phone on her? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Megan. We're going to hang up now, but I really appreciate you spending some time this afternoon for you to talk with all of us. And thanks so much. I'll see you again when I'm in D.C. All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay.